Welcome, everyone. So glad to welcome you here to our webinar, Maximizing Email Deliverability and Compliance. I'm Paul Leslie. I'm a content creator here at ZeroBounce. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is going to be a little different, not your traditional webinar. It's going to be more of a freewheeling conversation, if you will. First, I'd like to introduce you to Brian Minick. He's the Chief Operating Officer at ZeroBounce. He has more than 15 years of experience in tech and marketing, a real passion for talking about deliverability and email. He's also a very accessible guy. You'll see there a way for you to connect with him on LinkedIn. ZeroBounce is the #1 email verifier for more than 350,000 clients. You're going to see a lot of very well-known brands there. Netflix, Samsung, Amazon, Disney, and many of you all. Many companies around the world rely on ZeroBounce. It's a four-time Inc. 5000 honoree. ZeroBounce helps you connect with real prospects and boost your email ROI. I'm also pleased to introduce you all to a friend of ours, our co-host Tom Wozniak, Chief Operating Officer at Optizmo. They are delivering the industry's most robust platform for email compliance and suppression list management to clients throughout the US and around the world. When you think of compliance, think of Optizmo. Optizmo Technologies is the recognized thought leader in the email and online marketing space for email suppression list management, email campaign management, data management, and risk mitigation services relative to email compliance. We're going to get things started here.
Well, Tom, it's nice to see you again and chat with you again, and also co-host this webinar with you. So thank you, and thank you for joining us. And I'm really excited. I think we have some great content for everybody today.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a lot of fun the last time we got together to hang out in person. Really appreciate the invitation to join you on this, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
So, I think a good starting point. How do you go about building an email list that complies with regulations and best practices?
Good question. I think, and I guess I'll tackle the beginning of this, and I'm sure we could both speak to this one as probably a lot of these topics that we'll chat on today. They're in the United States, and I guess maybe that's the first caveat that we start this with is, I guess it depends on where you're located as to how you build that email list. In the United States, it is still legal under the CAN-SPAM Act of 2003 to send email to people who have not technically subscribed. You can send, cold email to people you don't have a relationship with and who have not opted in. Many other countries around the world, that is very different, and you do need some version, maybe a very detailed opt-in, like in certain parts of the EU, those kind of things, before you can engage in an email conversation. So when it comes to building an email list, that's probably the first piece of that, is to understand your local regulatory environment. But we'll speak to the United States since that's where we are. I think the traditional way of going about that is, and still probably the truly best practice for building an email list where you've got engagement is, to build it yourself. And, that might involve, building a newsletter list, say from, a website where you provide people with an opportunity to, maybe download information, sign up, obviously, for, specifically for content from you that you're going to share on a regular basis, and build that list over time. That certainly is also the process that takes the longest. That can, depending on, how many visitors you have to your site, that could be years to build something that would have critical mass from a marketing standpoint. But you're going to have the most probably engaged and enduring list if you go about that, take that as your process. Certainly we know people who will buy data in the space, and obtain an email list from a third party. That is certainly, again, as long as you are doing it in a way that is compliant, that can be a way to rapidly scale an email list that you've got. Of course, you are subject to wherever those names came or those email addresses came from, and whether the company or individual who involved in building those did it, how they did it. What was their process for finding them? Maybe they were all opted into something else, and you're getting a relatively engaged list, or maybe you're getting something that was scraped and is not going to be super engaging. So I think it's going to be one of those. Brian, I'm sure we've all heard this. The answer for most questions in email marketing. What's the best way to do this? How do you do that? It depends. And I think this is a perfect example of that, where it really kind of depends on both where you're starting from and what your internal process is in terms of how you want to go about this kind of stand, and then what you have access to.
Totally, it's so funny, Tom, because your perspective is on the compliance side, which is, by the way, this is such a great duo and jive, because we're on the collection, the quality, and you're on the compliance. And so tying two together, it's just so critical. For me, when I think about the best way to kind of create or start your email list, it's the hard way. It's the tough way. It's the manual way. It's the getting the right people. It's attracting the right audience, getting them on your website. But optimizing that stuff is super important. Making sure that you are putting those things in front of people to collect the email addresses of people. What I commonly see is people are trying to fast track it. That's hard to do. It's very hard to collect the email addresses in a good, clean format. And people want to purchase the data, and I understand it. And there's some cases for that where I get it. You have a sales team. They need leads. They have to go through it. So what's really important is that you're kind of working through it and making sure you're compliant, because you don't want to put the business at risk. And then secondly, making sure the emails that you're sending to are deliverable and that they have an actual inbox and a recipient on the other side of that. One of the big things that are good is on the sign up forms to make sure you're collecting the email address there, obviously, but making sure you're also accounting for all of the kind of nuances that come with that, especially as mobile is dominating the web traffic world. So typos, things of that nature that might be happening on your sign up forms when you're trying to collect on the quality side, right? Because these are people who are on your website, they like you, or they downloaded your paper, they're checking out your social media, you're collecting it. You do want to have some layers of validation that are making sure the emails you're bringing in are deliverable. That's really important, because there's nothing worse than collecting an undeliverable email. Like, it's such a waste of time and effort and money. And then you have bounces and you have all these problems that come with it. So double opt-in's another one. That's a really good one to make sure that these people are really wanting your email, and really just do it with thought, do it with purpose, and be clever on trying to collect the data. There are ways to get people to be more interested in you and more inclined to give you their email address than simply just trying to purchase or scrape data or collect it. And kind of the gray area, is I call that stuff to me.
I think that both of you are kind of intertwined in this one, coming from each of your angles here. What about someone out there who thinks, well, can't I take a little shortcut here and there and possibly buy a list? What do you all say about that?
Yeah, again, if depending on where you are, that is potentially certainly, and maybe I always like to give the quick caveat, because in compliance, we end up talking about legal regulations. I am not an attorney, so please do not take anything that I say as actual official legal advice. I did take the LSAT way back in the day, so I've been, my attorney friends like to call me legal adjacent. But so to answer the question, as long as it's done legally, you've kind of crossed a first hurdle, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea. And if perhaps you have, let's assume you've got a case where, you've got access to a list that you're at least told was, a built, through maybe double opt-in, over the course of time, and done we'll call it the right way again, the hard way. And perhaps it's a way to access that and be able to mail to it so that you can scale your business, quicker than you can by building it yourself. I think to Brian's point, you just have to, one, be awfully careful about the quality of that data. It's easy for someone selling it to you to say it was collected in a certain way, but unless you've got access to all the records of all the opt-ins, you don't really know that. And, you don't know how old some of those addresses are, and are some of them live email addresses anymore? Are people actually actively in those inboxes? Has it even been cleansed? To the point of is the syntax, is it even deliverable at all? So there's a lot of things I think you would have to take into real serious consideration if you were to go that route. I think maybe an alternative to that would be, again, perhaps you've got a company that has a large email list. Could you perhaps arrange with them to send from their email server an email promoting your newsletter, your content, and then get people to come back to your website to sign up? That is probably certainly a safer way, a more high quality way to ensure that you're still getting your offer, or whatever communications you wanted to get out to this larger audience, you're getting it out to them, but you're doing it in a way that, one, should absolutely be compliant, and two, is probably more in line with best practices.
Yeah, so I think about this. I don't think there's a perfect answer. I think what I'm going to hope to do is kind of open some ideas as to what could be okay and what is really not okay. And so what could be okay is purchasing leads from a company that is collecting insurance quotes, because a lot of people are going to this website because they want a whole bunch of home or auto insurance quotes, and they're kind of going into those type of funnels to seek and get quotes from agents. I think that's nothing wrong with purchasing that type of a data point or a lead acquisition funnel. There's absolutely nothing wrong. These people are going into that saying, hey, I want people to contact me, and you're dipping your hand in the bucket. I think there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And quite honestly, it's who's a better customer if you're an insurance agent. So those type of concepts, I think, make a lot of sense. Where the ones are really bad, and by all means, if this is you, sorry, you're going to get some bad news. But if it's not you, don't ever do this, which is the guy who's sending you an email from an Outlook or a Gmail account saying, I have all of ZeroBounce's competitors, all their customers. You want to buy that data? Guys, just so you're aware, that list has been sold probably 1 million times. It is the same list with a new subject to catch your attention. That list is full of problems like you will not believe. That's full of spam traps. That's full of invalid emails. That's full of people who never opted into this stuff. They're basically selling a data set, and they've sold it to you, and hopefully not, but hundreds of thousands of people, whoever's purchased that. And the big problem is when you move that into a system like MailChimp, HubSpot, any of these type of things, it's not the first time they've seen that list either, guys. Where this is 2024. You have machine learning. You have the smartest development we've ever had, the smartest systems we've ever had. They're now blocking people just simply on you uploading that data. They already know what you did, and you think you're doing kind of the right thing. So I think that's an example of the extreme. Don't ever do this. Don't ever buy those type of lists. However, if you're kind of those people that are also prospecting and going to ZoomInfo and doing these kind of things, it's not the best practice, but I can understand the case for some of it. Just be careful, be cautious. Don't just grab as much as you can and send as much as you can. Put thought behind a lot of this stuff. Actually look at who you're trying to email. Do some actual personalization behind that. Put some love in the message. Just don't make it seem like you simply grabbed everything and just blasted it. I'll give you an example. The people who are emailing me, I have row after row in my spam folder of, I can see you're Brian Minick, the COO of ZeroBounce. It's like, dude, can you at least change the template? Like, you're all using the same template. That's what I mean. That stuff's the obvious stuff. Don't do that. But if you are looking to kind of acquire data where people are sourcing great leads for you and you're just purchasing access to that, that makes sense. And I don't see any kind of issues there. And so to me, this is not a one answer fits all. This is, use some logic, use some common sense, use some things that make sense. Don't just blast people because you got access to their email. That's not the solution. It's maybe they're interested in your products. That's different. So that's how I kind of see that stuff.
So suppose somebody's using an email finder and they want to send what they call a cold email. Could you all quickly kind of give us a little bit of an idea? Is that a good idea? Or if it is, how should somebody go about it? What would be a good tip?
Yeah, Brian, just like you said, I mean, this is when we're talking about, you've got salespeople and they're looking to, one, stay busy and reach out to potential customers. So really, this is probably more, and again, we're dealing with kind of a B2B kind of situation. So volumes are smaller. Chances are, I mean, you probably have two use cases here. And one is you're sending one-to-one emails where, okay, you've tracked down the COO at ZeroBounce. You got Brian's email that you found on Zoom Info, or not to name them in particular, but anywhere online you've come across it, and you want to send Brian a business email. Hopefully not with one of those ridiculous templates that make it obviously hit your spam folder, but maybe you really think that your product or service is something that the Brian and ZeroBounce could use. And so being able to reach out, that's, this is kind of sales 101. We've been doing it, cold outreach, if you will, to prospects for, since business began. And email's been doing it, since it began in the 1970s. So I think the keys to doing that, one, again, in the US, it's legal to do it. And on that one-to-one basis, I think you've got a stronger rationale behind doing it than, say, doing a spray and pray kind of blast to a bunch of email addresses that you've just scraped, from one of these sites, and just like, okay, I just want a ton of contacts at a bunch of businesses that might or might not be a fit, but it's so much easier for me to just scale this as opposed to sending out a one-to-one email. I'm going to do it that way. It could be a time saver, but your response rate is going to be almost certainly lower because, again, you're going to be probably stuck with one of those templates that Brian or I or everybody else has seen time and time again in our inboxes or spam folders. So my thought on, again, the cold email, I think it doesn't bother me personally when I get them. So that's sort of sometimes my first instinct is every once in a while somebody will send me a cold email that's really good and happens to be for something I might be interested in. And when that does, I appreciate that they send it to me. So I think as much as anything, it's about doing it the right way and actually trying to engage with your audience, doing a little more than just scraping our first and last name and the company we work for and saying something like, I've seen you at Optizmo, fill in the blank, have been doing great things in the compliance fill in the blank space. It's like, no, you haven't. You don't know anything about what we're doing at Optizmo. You just pulled my email address and data from a database. So, if you can actually personalize it in a way that's real and authentic, and then you've actually got value to provide, oh, shoot, this is, again, it's biz dev, it's sales.
Yeah. I really think about the personalization. I have gotten, and the ones that always stand out for me, at least, because I'm getting targeted. I'm sure, Tom, you're constantly getting emails of these cold emails. The ones that take the time, make a personalized video, hold up a sign, hey, Brian, they wrote it on a whiteboard, sent that on the photo. I'll at least entertain it. Right now, I'm also looking like, what's this guy doing? So it's exactly like you said, the textbook ad lib that feels like I'm back 10 years old again, of being able to fill in the blank of company name, title. That's the stuff. It's not good. But I think there's also interesting ways and things that to think about is, for example, with ZeroBounce, we have an email finder product, but that means our email finder product is about coming to us with all the information besides the email address. So if I know I met Tom and Brian were in a Waymo in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was like, Tom was awesome. I had a great time. Real story, by the way. And I'm saying to myself, man, that's awesome. And oh crap, I never got Tom's business card. Right now, to be able to go in and say, hey, I'm looking for Tom Wozniak at optizmo.com. Boom, there's his email address. That's a great use case for things like that on the relationship side, where, I guess LinkedIn would be great for this as well, obviously. But there are some scenarios like that where we will see people that have met people, collected things, got their names, but then never actually got their email address. So they're looking for those people as well. I think that's a good, and that shows a little initiative that you're trying to find these people. So there's definitely some good cases on it. And again, I think the biggest thing is guys stop being lazy with this stuff. This doesn't work, and the spam filters are really good. Your template that you didn't even modify from the starting point of the system that they've delivered to 100,000 customers, you can't use that. Use it as an understanding of how the system works, but do not use that to actually mail. Put some more thought behind that stuff. And I will say this, it depends upon my mood. If you catch me and I'm in a good mood, I might reply to you. That same email on a different day, different time, when I'm having a bad day, man, I'm going to report you as spam. If I'm going to go after you, and retaliate in a sense, and kind of try to throw maybe some I'm not going to receive it as well. That's really what I'm trying to say. So it is definitely a cat and mouse type game.
Lots of very good information here. And that's a good reminder about what day is it, that the person on the other end is in fact a human being. And whatever kind of emails you're sending, it's always good to keep that in mind. But let's kick the heat up just a little bit. The person is either going to send one or a few emails. Let's talk about what you do next. How do you increase the chances of deliverability once you've decided on the next email that you're going to send?
Tom, I think I'll kick this off because I do think there's also some good stuff on the back end of what I'm going to say. So I'm going to leave you a topic that you can run with. So in order to achieve deliverability, it means you're getting into the inbox, by the way. So delivered means you just sent it. You hit send from your mail server, from your ESP or your Gmail account, and it's off it goes, delivered. Delivery and deliverability is the ability for it to actually be shown in the inbox. So when someone's actually able to read it, because no one's checking the spam folder. There's a lot of things that can affect your ability to be in the inbox or not. Obviously, your reputation is going to play the biggest role. But the one of the kind of topics here is it's such a mysterious term, your email sending reputation. Most people don't know how to measure it. Most people don't know how to view it. Most people don't even know what it is. They've just heard the term and they assume that they are good because I don't do anything bad, right, Tom? You don't do anything bad. No,
Right.
we don't do anything bad. The truth is, what people aren't paying attention to and aren't also realizing is, sure, the marketing team might not be doing anything bad, but have you guys talked to the VP of sales? Because he might be doing something bad. He might be blasting out emails, cold emails, and they're just killing your reputation. But marketing is doing all the right stuff. So what this can come down to is domain reputation is affected by more than just one department and more than just one team. The head of marketing doesn't dictate how all deliverability goes. You have other components. You have your transactional emails. You have lots of other things which generally actually help boost your reputation, because who's marking receipts as spam? Who's marking your confirm your account email as spam? Not too many people. So those things actually will help you. But there's some technical configurations on your domain that are very important to be set up, and Google and Yahoo and now Microsoft coming on board. That's going to be hard requirements. They already are, and you should have already had them. If you don't, the terms I'm talking about here, get your pen out for the acronyms, the SPF, DKIM, DMARC, and BIMI is another piece that can just kind of help here. But those kind of 4 acronyms can definitely help boost deliverability a little bit. DMARC is that security protocol to make sure no one's spoofing, which is a very big problem in the email space today. There's no protection on the domain. And so you definitely want to make sure that you're doing something to protect your domain, to authenticate yourself as a sender. That's really what we're talking about here, is to be able to authenticate stuff. Because what else is kind of important, and where I'm going to kind of pass it off to you, Tom, which people aren't thinking about, is how the honoring of unsubscribes, the honoring of people marking you as spam is so important. People just most people don't even know about how to honor kind of people marking you as spam. You guys got to get that stuff off your list. You keep emailing them. Tom, can you talk a little bit about that? I think that's such an important topic for people.
Yeah. Obviously, first and foremost, when somebody hits that unsubscribe button, they need to come off your list. Most DSPs will do that for you, and sending platforms are going to do that essentially automatically in the background. You don't have to think about it too much. But if, depending on how you are, you've got your sending set up, and if you're using, for example, third parties to email on your behalf, then you got a whole other thing that you got to think about, because depending on how those emails are being sent, if they're just essentially sending, your offer, and it looks like it's coming from you as the advertiser, they get an unsubscribe. You're as far as the consumer is concerned, they've unsubscribed from you, the brand, and they don't want to hear from you again. And so you are in best position to not run afoul of both legal compliance issues as well as simply just, again, deliverability problems and bad consumer experience. You've got to get a hold of those unsubscribes and make sure that you're honoring those at the brand level and not just with your partners. So that's all from a legal compliance standpoint. But then, as you said, you get into, spam. Okay, these are folks, maybe they haven't hit unsubscribe, but they are just constantly marking you as spam. There are, and I won't go into obviously the technical details of, how you can access people who are marking your emails as spam. But if your sending platform is not, at either automatically or after a certain threshold, putting those people in a do not mail list, you should awfully, strongly consider doing that manually, because again, these are people who are going out of their way to say, without taking that final step of saying, please stop emailing me, they're actually doing something that, depending on how you look at it, is worse, which is complaining to the inbox provider. It's like, oh, this sender is just sending me junk that I do not want, and I don't want to see it in my inbox. And if you keep sending it, they're going to keep complaining about it. So, the long tail of that is that, yeah, you're going to just really dramatically impact your deliverability. And you're also just, creating a bad experience for these consumers who, maybe, every situation's different, but maybe you're hitting, Brian on a bad day, and yep, he's going to mark you as spam today. And if you keep doing that day after day, he's certainly not going to suddenly change his mind and be like, oh, I've marked him as spam 50 times, but now today I'm in a good mood about it. But, by doing that, you've essentially, established for the long term that you are probably a brand that he is never going to want to do business with. So just keeping that in mind, it's just, it's bad all the way around.
Tom, two questions for you, because if it's on the top of my head, and if it's on the top of mine, maybe it's on the top of someone else's. Is there ever a way? What do I do with my unsubscribe list? Is there ever a way to reuse that? Is there ever a way to do anything with it? And the answer probably is no. But is there anything that can be done with that data?
It's a great question. You can't mail it, but what you really, really should be doing is looking at it, because again, there's, these are all people who have gone out of their way to say, I don't want your emails anymore. Please stop. And for, I think, a lot of brands, a lot of marketers, like, okay, cool, I just want to stop. I'm going to put that out of my brain and move on. And that's understandable. We all know nobody likes being told no. It's you've just been rejected, and so oftentimes feels easier to just move on. But like in any scenario, there's information in that message they've sent you, and what you should be doing is looking at that list and looking for commonalities. Are there audience segments that are disproportionately showing up in my unsubscribe list? Is it, maybe it could be geographic, maybe it's demographic, it's a group of your customers, because what they're telling you is what you're sending me is not relevant to me. And if you see a critical mass of certain groups that have a higher propensity to unsubscribe, it's telling you that you're not doing a very good job of serving that audience segment in one way or another with your messaging. So it might be that it's just, okay, maybe that's a segment I just shouldn't be mailing because my product or service doesn't resonate with them. Or maybe it's telling you that I need to change my messaging because my product makes total sense for these people, or what I'm providing I think should be interesting to them, but I'm obviously not doing a great job of communicating that. So it's a great opportunity for you to take those negative marketing signals and use them to actually optimize your future plans for other people who have not yet opted out. And hopefully by making those changes, you will keep that from happening.
Just my second thought on it. I totally agree with what you're saying. It's very interesting. Is it ever okay, Tom, to say reply to me to opt out of my mailing list? Is that what's your point of view on that one? I see it so much.
I mean, now we're getting into the weeds of the legal requirements, because that's really where we start with the unsubscribes. The United States, essentially, it's not every country, but we'll just for practical purposes, just about every country has pretty specific rules about how you have to allow people to opt out. And some may get very specific and say, this is the mechanism you need to use. And so they may say clearly, you have to include a link, and as soon as somebody clicks that link, they're opted out, and that's it. Others may say, well, you need to provide a method, but leave it a little more open-ended, and then you have the opportunity to choose to do something like a reply to me. I would say, just from a practical purpose, even if you're emailing at scale, you don't want people replying to you to ask to opt out. One, it's just going to be an unmanageable mess to deal with. Two, you've now turned it into a manual process, which we all know best intentions of us all might be to, I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to, honor the opt out as promptly as the law requires. But when it's a manual process, human beings make mistakes, and suddenly you may be exposing yourself to actual legal problems by not automating a process that will just make that potential headache go away, and you don't have to actually address it in that manual way.
It's interesting. For me, it's like such an automatic never do that.
And honestly, that's why I want to say, it's like, no, I wouldn't do that. I think that's a terrible idea.
maybe I'm short storying it for you here. Never do that, because here's also the thing, right? And put yourself in the recipient's shoes for that. By the way, if you're somebody who's doing that, please don't. So wait, you want me, just to be clear, you want me to reply to you and now give you my phone number from my email signature?
Yeah.
Are you nuts? Like these type of things. So just food for thought, everyone out there. For me, I'm marking you as spam immediately. Right. If that's your opt-out way, I'm marking you as spam. Yeah. I don't want you in anyone's inbox. You shouldn't be.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those, again, where, people need to take a step back. And sometimes it's, well, here's my legal requirements. Okay, you've met those. That's great. But what's the best practice? Because sometimes the best practice is a step beyond the legal requirement. And that's really what you need to do, or should do, if you want to build a long-term business. So I think it's don't look at the least common denominator and say, okay, I'm fine because I met the minimum standard. I'd say do the right thing, approach it from do business the way that you would like people to do business with you, and I think you'll be happier with the outcome.
For sure. Thanks, Tom.
Well, there's been some very good information here, and nobody can know it all. There's just so much from a legal standpoint, procedural standpoint, best practices. In closing here, is there perhaps a bigger picture kind of wisdom for somebody out there who wants to maximize email deliverability and compliance? What should people keep in mind?
I'll start on the deliverability. So for me, it's mainly focused on doing the right things. So implement best practices, make sure if you can, you should be doing double opt-ins, get everything kind of in the best. If people are receiving your email, or if you're sending mail to people who want to receive it and it's on topic for what they signed up for and what they consented for, generally speaking, deliverability is not going to be your issue. You will have issue on data churning. You will have issue if you're migrating ESPs and now you have technical configuration that needs to be reworked or revisited or looked at. But really the best thing is, number one, of course, I'm going to suggest some things here around what I know we do, because I know that we can detect the people that are going to be marking you as spam. I know that we can tell you, hey, don't email this email that's info@thedomain.com, because that's going to go to 30 different people. Those 30 people didn't opt in to you. Maybe one did, by the way. That's a very kind of big problem we see with deliverability, is too many people trying to mail these group emails, or we call them role-based emails. And you have no clue what's happening to that. I see them going into our support system. I see them then getting forwarded out to other emails. And the worst thing that can happen for deliverability is to send one mail and get 15 unique spam complaints. That's brutal. That's just absolutely chopping you on your deliverability. I always reverse it. If I'm the mail server, I'm the mail filter. My job's to block bad emailers. And my definition of blocking bad emailers is people who are receiving your email don't want it because they're marking you as spam. So if that's the biggest indicator, you need to make sure you're reducing how many people mark you as spam. That's really the ultimate killer right now. And what we have found through research, even depending upon some of the platforms, meaning the mail servers that they receive from, for example, AOL, it's easier to mark as spam than mark as read. So it's also behavior that we are seeing that people can impact you. The problem is stop sending to them. Stop. It's okay to reduce some of your risk and optimize the rest. I think that's a big deal. And I think that's a really kind of important piece that I just want to leave with everybody today is think quality. That's always my biggest thing. I'm constantly pushing quality over quantity. And that if you can think about that, segment, put the right messages in front of the right people, if possible, at the right time, that's the key. And for me, that's your golden ticket into the inbox and to stay there.
Yep, makes sense. And then, I mean, from a compliance standpoint, there's certainly the initial level, which is you want to stay in business, you need to stay compliant. It's just that simple. It's it gets beyond even deliverability, anything else. It's like you could just get put out of business if you are not following the legal rules. Fortunately, in the US, again, I referenced canned spam. And the great thing about it is you as a business do not need to read the 100-page, act to understand what you need to do. The FTC has actually done a really nice job of putting out a document for business that they update pretty regularly, which gives you essentially sort of hey, here are the 8 key steps, that you need to do to stay compliant. And it'll also let you know, how much money you are at risk of being fined for every email that's out of compliance, which the latest number is $51,744 per email instance that is out of compliance. You don't want to run into that problem. That's really, really bad. Obviously, you think about the size of that's one email address that was sent a non-compliant email. If you sent a non-compliant campaign to thousands upon thousands, and the FTC, learns of it and then wants to, actually action against you, that can put even a very large company out of business pretty fast. So the best thing about it is it's not hard to stay compliant. The law is set up in such a way that the requirements are all very achievable. Again, it's one of the main reasons why this law has been in place since, again, 2003. And while it's been updated, the main updates have essentially been things like, increasing that fine amount to deal with inflation, but they haven't been material to, hey, we're going to, change the actual requirements that we're going to put on you. It's more clarification of the requirements that are there. So I highly encourage anybody to read that document. I'm sure we can find a way to put the link in the notes because it's actually a great, guide for businesses that you can use to follow. And then, you get outside the United States. I just really highly recommend you make sure you understand the local regulations in either the country where your business exists or places where you're doing a lot of mailing, and make sure that you, at a minimum, understand what the compliance ramifications are, and hopefully that you're actually set up in such a way to follow them. Now, again, they change from country to country, and that can obviously create a real challenge for email marketers, because as we know, even if you don't intend to, you're probably mailing globally. We don't have a person's home address to know exactly where they are when you're sending them an email, so that obviously creates challenges. But a big piece of this is really doing all of your due diligence and your absolute best to ensure that you're following all of the regulations that apply to you as a marketer.
One thing, Tom, that scared me when I found this out and heard about it, I was like, what? This exists? And I don't know if many people are aware, so I just want to share it. There are websites and domains. They are known as litigators, litigator domains. If you send a piece of mail to those domains, if you're purchasing data, you're scraping data, you've grabbed other people's data, you name it, The method doesn't matter. The fact that you delivered a piece of mail to that domain, you're toast, by the way. You're in a lot of trouble because these guys are waiting for you to send a piece of mail. They're in business to sue you, by the way. They're in business to sue you because you mailed them. That scared me, and I'm going to tone down what I was going to say, but that scared me. I was like, this exists? And the answer is yes. So compliance is a big thing, guys. You got to make sure you're staying compliant and detect those, by the way. They can be detected. They're known. They're very vocal about who they are, and they can be detected through validation, but it's scary.
Absolutely.
Well, Tom Wozniak, Brian Minick, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for all this great information, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. Please don't hesitate if you all have any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Paul, as well. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Brian. This was great.
All right.